20 minutes. Hello, okay, so I'm Bobbie Gardner and I am based in Birmingham. I'm a PhD candidate at Royal Birmingham Conservatoire and I am a composer, and I'm in my final and third year of a practice-based research degree which explores the following title: Composition in a Hyperlocal Environment, which I'll explain in more detail. And it comprises of the following: research aims that where I will present a portfolio of hyperlocal compositional work. I will develop a methodological approach which enables both the composer and their community collaborators to produce work that equally demonstrates high levels of meaningful process and music. I will also, once I've finished all the doing, present an evaluation framework that assesses the efficacy of works of arts created in this context. I'm so nervous, I'm so sorry. I'm normally more coherent, but please bear with me.
We're all with you, Bobbie.
I'm very sleep deprived. And I will also be exploring in this project unusual experimental venues for performances of new music. I wanted to also mention something. Is Peter here? The guy who did the presentation this morning?
No, he's had to go.
Oh, in my mind, in my second year of research, has been the notion of the artist parachuting into communities and then mining content and then leaving. And so this is kind of, and what's been really great is I've been really thinking about the legacy of the work that I'm trying to do, and I found out that I want to mention this now because I'm worried that because I'm so nervous I'll forget to mention it at the end. that a project, another Citywide project, will be returning to these community groups or giving them the option to work together to create some more music, experimental music. We found out we can do that yesterday, so that's really cool. So I wanted to mention that. Okay, so the why, the so what behind this practice-based research is that in terms of my findings, I found there was a lot of research about community music and participatory arts, but there was a gap in the field in regard to music created in hyperlocal settings. It tackles the ongoing threat of the marginalisation of contemporary music and discrimination of community-based art projects as lesser arts, and explores the process of making art community for art's sake. It also explores the possibility of formulating an original compositional language that incorporates a socially engaged methodology relating to a very specific community or geographical area. So hyperlocal, I've been using this phrase a lot, and it's basically an idea that I have pinched from the realm of journalism. So it's emerged through a proliferation of online media like blogs and audio sites with geolocation added to it, like Audioboo. And it basically, as it says here, is online news or content services pertaining to a town, village, single postcode, or other small geographically defined community. What I love about the notion of hyperlocal is that it's quite fluid. How people perceive hyperlocal can vary considerably, as Radcliffe mentions, and how there's a sense of place is core to all hyperlocal services. And I wanted to explore how to write music collaboratively, which has a sense of place. So, in my master's, also at the Conservatoire, I did an experiment about, I need to contextualise this. So basically, when I was living in London, I was doing some training as a participatory artist, and I realised that I knew more about London's geography than I did Birmingham. I knew about the 32 boroughs, and it got me thinking, how did Birmingham work? I knew there was north-south. And so I went to Google, and I noticed that there was Birmingham is divided up into 40 wards. And initially I thought it'd be a really interesting compositional project to write 40 pieces of music about the area. But then I started to question what qualifies me, although I'm a Brummie, what qualifies me to write 40 pieces of music about the area, having lived in perhaps tops 3 of those wards. So then I thought about community engagement and learning about what it meant to live or work or create in those areas and doing that collaboratively. But then I got scared and I thought, what if I get to, say, 3 wards and I get really bored and I give up? And I then thought about extending it out and inviting more composers to join in that process. And through conversations and through the support of the composition department at Conservatoire, a pilot project emerged with backing from Sound of Music and Arts Council. I got a small grant and I commissioned 2 other composers, Kirsty Devani and Sebastiano Dessonnet, and we worked in 3 wards in Birmingham, and we, I think, in the space of from October 2014 to March 2015, we recruited from scratch a community group from these 3 wards in Aston, in Small Heath and in Balsa Heath, and it was quite labour intensive. Basically, we were going around to library spaces and to supermarkets and recruiting people from these local areas to join us in writing music about this area. The framework that I created was, in order for anyone to be part of the process, field recording, going out and recording sounds in the locality was the starting point to this creation. So you didn't have to have grade 8 piano, it was about sonically engaging in your environment. And then the second stage was for the composer and their collaborators to collaborate in a series of sessions to write new music about the area, and then ending in the performance. This happened, and we did a tour of, has anyone got any water? I'm really like, can I steal some water?
Yeah.
I'm so
I
sorry.
have used it, but don't worry about
I'm
it.
sorry.
It's just germs.
I'm an absolute lurker, I'm so sorry. So thank you. So basically, we chose library spaces because we felt they were neutral spaces. And so we did a tour, a library tour, which kind of sounds a bit counterintuitive, making noises in normally quiet spaces. But a lot of the, with the internet and the way that people are engaging knowledge in different ways, a lot of the library staff were really keen for us to do performances there. And so, yeah, they were successful. We had a great turnout, and we got some really great feedback as well in the pilot stage, which was that people loved the venues, the spaces. But there was one really interesting bit of feedback from the audience, and all the questionnaires were anonymised, was that why have you chosen the same ensemble to play for each of those 3 different areas? And basically, because I was based at Conservatoire, I had it was I think a mixed ensemble from the Conservatoire of clarinet and double bass, cello, that sort of thing, and which got me thinking, if I want to realise this entire project, then to have the same ensemble and to have the same sort of artists, musicians from the same institution, that's not really celebrating the diversity of the city. And so, after some time, and with lots and lots of help, including from some amazing organisations here, including BCMG, a flat organisational model was devised where I realised that you've got 40 wards, but there was no way that I could get funding to get 39 other composers. So I found out that Birmingham has 10 constituencies, and in each of the constituencies are 4 wards. So I could commission 9 other composers to work alongside me to write music about the 10 districts with 40 community groups. And the only way that could be realised would be to get different artistic partners to support me in that endeavour. So a framework was devised. It'd be a 2-year programme. We work in the 10 districts. There'd be 5 or more artistic partners who would run a district each year. There'd be 10 composers who all had to have a Brummie connection. So I suppose in some ways this project reminds me of, for those who know League of Gentlemen, and those characters who always say, are you local? This project is unashamedly about people being local, being about Birmingham, celebrating the city, and the organisations that were part of it, the music programmers, but all had a strong foundation in Birmingham, and the composers, you didn't have to be born in Birmingham, but it's just that you had to have a very strong tie to the city. And the other 9 composers were selected by the artistic partners. We worked in the 40 wards, 40 community groups. The community collaborates, they compose with the selected composer, local performances and non-concert hall spaces. This framework starting with field recording, a series of composing workshops where the composer is encouraged to deconstruct their method and work together with their collaborators to write music about the locality. So in year 1, it's 5 districts per year. In year 1, 4 out of the 5 were successful. And for reasons of a sensitive matter, I cannot mention why the last one didn't complete. But in year 1, we were in Edgbaston district, and MAC, who are a arts organisation, partnered with Capsule, and they selected composers Pram, who were alternative pop performers who use found sounds and make quite macabre, childlike pieces. And they collaborated with 4 groups in the ward. Because of time, I can't list them all. And then in Hodge District, we had Access Creative College, who selected Justin Coe Broderick, who was in Napalm Death, like quite an epic metal band, and he worked in Hodge Hill. He's actually from Hodge Hill District as well. He's from Shard End. BCMG selected in year 1 Percy Purslove, who is an amazing contemporary jazz musician, and there's an image of him collaborating with some home ed students and to do graduate schools. And then there's yours truly, who worked in Selly Oak District, where I was living at the time, working with some creative writers to map out the field recording route. And then in year 2, we had a new artistic partner, Black Pack Projects, who they do lots of film festivals, and they also work with sound. And they selected Scott Johansson, who was actually from Erdington, and to work with communities there. And then in year 2, we had in Hall Green District, we had Matt working with the Hare and Hounds, a live music venue, an independent, who selected, this is Grandmaster Gareth, who again is like pop, psychedelic, jazzy, kind of quite, doesn't take himself very seriously. That's him field recording with some year 2 students in Hall Green. And then we had another jazz musician called Zosa Cole, selected by Wasser for Showcase, who are a reggae sound system, essentially, and they also do exhibitions. They selected him. That's Zosa working with Via Nova, which is a contemporary choir made up of conservatoire alumni who are based in Ladywood District. And then we had in Peribar District a award-winning composer, Simon Dougal, who's more of the commercial world, and he's written for like Shania Twain and Apache Ian, like that kind of stuff. And that's him doing field recording with some students in a supermarket. And in Sutton Coldfield, again, Access Creative College, they selected a dubstep dance producer called Pogman, who worked in Sutton Coldfield. And that's him getting some oral histories from people based in Sutton Port Oaks about what it means to live there. So, and finally, BCMG selected Annie Mahtani, who's an electroacoustic artist, and she worked in Yardley District, and that's her working with a craft group. Right, so that's the list of all the community groups that, and there's an interactive website where you can see them and learn more about them. So the framework, as I mentioned, was field recording. I forgot 5 minutes. Okay, field recording, deconstructing the compositional framework, and then hyperlocal performances. So we had performances in working men's clubs. Strangely in year 2, there seemed to be a tour of church spaces. Now, in terms of the spaces that were selected, the community group, the artistic partners, and the composer could decide which spaces were suitable for these performances. And for some reason, a lot of spaces for churches, so that's what happened. And I wanted to share some sounds. I've got 5 minutes. Okay, I'll share a snippet of a piece by Scott Johansson with the Kingston Food Community Group, Chipping Primary School, Scotland Green History Group, and the Polish Expats Association. So Scott also works with visuals, and he created a false narrative, which he only revealed at the end, of a Erdington native called Iris Threadwell, and he used this fictional character as a means for him and his community collaborators to investigate and to talk about the different wards in Erdington. So I'll just play a little snippet. Ooh. I'll play you about 2 seconds of a piece that I co-wrote with my collaborators listed there. We wrote a piece about Bourneville Ward for an instrument gifted by the Cadbury family to the Bourneville residents called carillon. I had never heard of the carillon, and so my collaborators educated me, and we decided to write this piece together. I'll play you a little bit. And I'll play you a little snippet of a piece written by Pram with their collaborators. This is in particular about Quinton, which is it's like a haven for young moms, and they wrote this really beautiful childlike piece for this particular ward, which I'll play. A little snippet of BCMG piece written by Mahtani and all her wonderful collaborators. It's called Resounding Yardley. time, so I won't tell you what I'm doing next. Okay.
If you want to summarize what's next, that's okay.
Okay, so I am collaborating with members of the online vinyl community to co-write some music inspired by the soul music of the 60s and 70s, and we're looking at our favourite orchestrators and arrangers, and then we're going to start to write a piece for an orchestra. And I'm also working with hyper-local media researchers at Birmingham City University to write music together as well, which is going to be interesting. Right.
Great stuff. Thank you. Well, you absolutely get the award for bringing the most eclectic hyper-local groups together. And Tai Chi and what else was in your group?
Young moms.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely fantastic. Has anybody got a question for Bob?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the way in some of those pieces that you get sort of composed sounds and kind of sonically mediated material, and then in at least one there were sort of almost like community background sounds. You can sort of hear a door opening and someone coming into the room, and a lot of my work is with communities, and that's what projects sound like. You've always got sort of real life kind of busting through the door, and it never is a bubble. It's just beautiful hearing that. So nice and good.
Yes?
Is there anything about your approach and the framework that you use, that if you were to do something similar again, or you were advising another city to do a similar project, any changes you've made?
Oh my goodness. Definitely. I think that contact time is really important with the community group, and I even, in terms of the second year of the project, I stipulated with all of the composers that regardless of the artistic partner brokering contact with the school teacher or the community leader, that it was essential that they went in, met their collaborators, and just got to know them, and just to check in whether their expectations were met, that they knew, just in terms of the duration of the project, were they happy to work in this way, that sort of thing. That was like really important, because there was one occasion in the first workshop, there was a choir who, I think they didn't realise they were going to be doing field recordings. They thought they were going to be recorded, and that caused some tension, let's just say, in that first session. I think if I had more funding, there would be one composer for each of the wards. There'd be 40 composers, because I think you need a year with the group. But with the nature of funding, I can't ask all those composers to work in that way. What else? I think, again, capacity-wise, I had a small team of people, a small core team. I would have more outreach coordinators working in tandem with each of the artistic partners. So yeah, it was just hard to kind of spread myself everywhere. So just to really enrich that connection, I suppose, and more CPD sessions. We did have some with Duncan about how to utilise field recordings in pieces and that sort of thing. But I think more sessions with the composing team to check in, to share practice. Yeah, I think more of that would have been useful.
Were there any guidelines regarding time, duration for the pieces, and are you planning to document that in the form of a DVD with all the different pieces?
So there is, if I can show you, a interactive website that was commissioned as part of the project, and there's a sound map which also documents Birmingham's musical history. So if we go to Yardley and we click on A-cut screen, one of the wards, it will work. You'll see photographs of the community groups, you'll get blog posts, you can hear the field recordings. There's a blog post by Annie where she's talking about the process. The piece will be there. So yeah, for each of the 40 wards there was one group that we couldn't get photo permission, so we have to respect that. Yes. But we wanted to work with them. But yeah, I'm releasing a vinyl record of the 10 works as well. So.
Wow.
That's good. They'll give you the final. Aren't you told? Yes, Tommy.
Yeah, can I just add, I think the thing that strikes me about your project, obviously I was part involved in it, is there's an extraordinary artistic generosity on your part for creating all these fantastic opportunities for composition and then saying, well, I'm just going to share those with lots of other people. And also, I think what Jackie said, and actually Lee said, the diversity of it. So there isn't a single aesthetic frame for the music produced, which is extraordinary.
That was in response to audience feedback because the pilot version was very contemporary classical, and
that didn't work.
When I reflected on that feedback, it made sense. Birmingham is one of the most super diverse cities in Europe, and a young city as well. So I just felt it made sense to bring together all those fantastic music programmers and arts organisations and celebrate the work they do.
Yeah, the other thing just to finally add was that to me, when I listen to them, and I don't know Birmingham that well, but the music sounds like the place, in a sense. So it's not just, it's like you say, it's not just, we're doing some generic songwriting, generic new music or whatever. It has a real roots within where it is, which kind of related to some of the other things people have been talking about this morning. So that was really interesting. Okay.
Just to add also, I think I'm interested to hear your reflections on what you do differently. I think the big thing for me was finding that person or that organisation within each of those communities who was going to unlock those connections. And once that happened, the project in those areas really happened. And I think in the first year, we would both acknowledge that maybe the organisations that we were using to help us navigate that maybe weren't as helpful as maybe we'd hoped.
Yes.
And I totally agree that the effort that you need to put into those, to meeting and greeting those community groups is enormous. It reminds me of some of us all know Bruce Cole, and he always used to, from York University, used to talk about the first session, he used to be going and having a cup of tea with people. And just that advice has stuck with me always, and it absolutely connects to this.
We played a lot of bingo. We've hung out, and some of the composers are still returning to their community collaborators as well. So, it's.
Victoria, did you want to answer?
It was just a quick question. So you worked with all these different wards. Did they actually get to hear what each other had done, or did they share, or was that a plan for the future to put someone from one ward into another ward?
So in December there is a closing party, and also the vinyl launch event as well. Tuesday the 18th, Nancy. And we're inviting the community groups to come together and to hear some of the works, and we did invite them to performances and things. But I suppose the reason why the performances were localised was to make it easy for vulnerable groups to get there by foot and we supported them with taxis and bus fares, and all the performances were free. And in terms of the timing of the performances as well, we tried to really cater for diverse groups of people to access them.
I have a very practical question. When you're doing a PhD, so you're doing research, but you're also comparing, you're working with your group, you've set up this project, but who's doing all this administrative and production work? Because this is huge. Is there money for that?
I received a generous grant from the Arts Council England and support from Birmingham City University as well. And all the artistic partners, they contributed very generously towards the commission fee for each of the composers.
And is there one person who produces it? And
myself and a producer, and there's a core team of about 3 of us, and because of this flat organisational model, if there was one capacity issues or funding issues for facing the arts and culture, then in an ideal sense, each artistic partner would run their district, and if they had an endless supply of coordinators and things, and we would be there in the periphery to support them. And we had a mixed kind of bag with that, so BCMG were really on board and gung-ho, and other organisations could support in different ways. And so there was a team of us, yes, but I did a lot of admin and I struggled to compose.
You have most respect, really.
Yeah,
that's why I can't talk.
You can say it differently. Don't tell me who your supervisor is, but she or he has you doing too much. If there are no other questions, let's thank Bobbie, and there should be a lunch waiting for us.